In the beginning of the film, we see Gulliver waking up in his room, following his daily routine, talking to his superhero toys, and singing while taking a shower. Gulliver works in a newspaper company in New York. One day he meets a new employee named Dan, whom he befriends. Gulliver becomes Dan's boss as he is senior to him in the mailing department. One day, they were both going to deliver mail, where they bump into Darcy. Darcy is a journalist, whom Gulliver secretly loves but hasn't expressed his feelings yet. One day, Dan brings a notice to Gulliver that he has been promoted by the head of the mail department, but Gulliver has been working there for 10 years without getting any respect, let alone a promotion. Dan tells him that he is afraid of talking to people, which is why he hasn't made progress till now. Disheartened, Gulliver walks out, but then he sees Darcy still working. Gulliver gathers courage and goes to her cabin, but being clumsy as he is, he accidentally picks up a paper. Darcy asks him if he wants to fill out a travel writing assignment, and nervously, Gulliver says yes. And the next day, he submits the paper for his travel blog and copies and pastes some articles from the internet into his blog. The next day, he gives Darcy the paper, and Darcy is pleased with his writing skills and gives him a new assignment. She tells him to go to the Bermuda Triangle and write an article on the disappearing ships there. Impressed by Darcy, Gulliver agrees, and Darcy arranges for a boat and other things for him. The next day, Gulliver takes a flight to Bermuda Triangle, where he meets a man who was arranging a boat for Gulliver and tells him how to operate the boat. His journey is easy because the boat is automatic. Then Gulliver sets off alone for the Bermuda Triangle. Initially enjoying the trip, he reads a book on making robots and falls asleep later. When he wakes up after some time, he sees a big tornado in front of him. He quickly puts on a life jacket upon seeing the sea storm, and while doing so, the cyclone pulls his boat inside. After some time, when Gulliver regains consciousness, he finds that he is unable to move his body. When he lifts his head to look around, he is surprised to see tiny people climbing on his chest. Their leader introduces himself as Commander Edward of Lilliput. As the camera zooms in, it becomes apparent that the tiny people are standing all around him, and they have tied him to the ground with ropes and stakes. Commander Gulliver is referred to as a beast, and he frees himself easily. He thinks he is dreaming and closes his eyes. Edward orders his soldiers to bring Gulliver down, and they do so, causing Gulliver to lose consciousness. When he wakes up, he sees that he is being carried in a carriage towards the kingdom of Lilliput, and people are coming out of their homes to catch a glimpse of the beast. Gulliver is presented before the king of Lilliput. Theodore, and the king's daughter, Princess Mary, expresses sympathy for his condition, and asks Edward why so much force was necessary. Edward explains that Gulliver is a spy from their enemy state, Blefusca. And finally, Gulliver speaks and asks the king where he is, to which the king's assistant tells him that he is in the great empire of Lilliput. In the next scene, we see that Gulliver has been imprisoned in a jail, where he meets another prisoner named Horatio, who tells him that both of them have been imprisoned by Edward. Just then, Edward arrives, and threatens Gulliver that he can keep him imprisoned for the rest of his life if he wants. Edward takes him from there, and makes him work in the fields. At that moment, their enemy kingdom Blefusca attacks, with a plan to kidnap the princess and set fire to the palace. Edward rushes towards the palace, and orders the soldiers not to save any princess, only he will save her. But Horatio tells Gulliver that Edward won't reach in time. So Gulliver easily lifts of Blefusca's soldiers, and throws him down, and saving the princess. Meanwhile, the king and his secretary get trapped in the fire, while trying to save the princess in a hurry. Gulliver urinates on the palace to extinguish the fire, and people start applauding and the king is saved. After that, the king set Horatio free and thanked Gulliver, inviting him to a dinner party in the evening. Edward was getting very angry seeing all this. The king asked Gulliver where he was from, and Gulliver told him that he was from Manhattan. Gulliver was feeling like a hero for the first time, so he introduced himself as the president, and everyone believed him. Except for Edward. Afterward, the people of Lilliput built a big house for Gulliver so that he could live here like in New York. Gulliver also built a theater so that the whole kingdom could sit in it, and he showed them a drama of the sinking Titanic, telling them that all of it happened with him. After seeing his incredible bravery, everyone was amazed. Edward asked how he managed to survive, and Gulliver replied that he was saved. In the next scene, Horatio seeks Gulliver's help to impress the princess, and Horatio successfully impresses her. However, Edward was also infatuated with the princess and desired to marry her by any means necessary. Meanwhile, the soldiers found Gulliver's boat, and Gulliver retrieves his phone, which contains 12 voicemails from Darcy expressing anger towards Gulliver due to his fabricated articles and escape. Gulliver does not want to face Darcy again, so he decides to stay in Lilliput permanently. Edward is unhappy with this decision, and the king appoints Gulliver as the general. In his anger, Edward shuts down Lilliput's defense system, which Bluefogia takes advantage of and attacks Lilliput. Due to being a general, the responsibility of stopping them now lay with Gulliver. He goes into the water hesitantly and starts jumping water his hand, but the enemy retaliates. However, the cannonballs have no effect on him, and he captures the enemy and takes them out of Lilliput. Gulliver is treated with great hospitality, including haircuts, massages, and various arrangements. Princess rejects Edward as well in anger, and Edward meets the people who have a book on making robots from Gulliver's boat. With their help, they build a big robot. The enemy attacks again, and Gulliver gets ready to fight the small people once again. When he sees a giant robot in front of him, he is surprised. Edward challenges Gulliver, and Gulliver has no choice but to accept the challenge. He tries to push the robot back, but the robot is much stronger than him and lifts him up by his pants, and tells him to give up. And then Gulliver confesses his defeat, and tells the king and everyone that he had lied to them all. Then Edward sends Gulliver to an island where nobody dares to go, and when Gulliver is left there, he is captured by a giant little girl who puts him in her Barbie house. And here, while searching for Gulliver, Darcy had also come to Lilliput, and Gulliver had told everyone that Darcy is his princess. Edward recognizes him and takes him prisoner as well, where she meets the king and his queen. After Gulliver's defeat, Edward took him prisoner. Seeing all this, Horatio goes to Gulliver and tells him everything. The child has a U.S. soldier's suit, using which Gulliver leaves from there, and going to Lilliput, he first meets Darcy, and tells her that he loves her very much. Gulliver then decides that, now he challenges Edward, not for his bravery, but to help the people of Lilliput. The next day, they face each other and the robot quickly gains the upper hand over Gulliver. Horatio sneaks inside the robot to help Gulliver and defeats Edward from within, cutting off the robot's power. With Edward defeated, the people cheer and Horatio's bravery earns him permission to marry the princess as well. But as soon as he gets the chance, Edward captures the princess, although she manages to twit him and Darcy kisses Gulliver for the first time. Gulliver also fosters friendship between Blefusca and Lilliput, ending their enmity. Finally, Gulliver and Darcy repair their ship and sail back to New York. A few weeks later, Gulliver quits his job and becomes a travel writer. Now Gulliver and Darcy are in a happy relationship, and the movie ends with a happy ending. If you like this video, Please like and subscribe to the channel.